Hey, welcome back to another video. I'm Ivan Calderon, and today we're going to be talking about whether or not Nexus 3 is worth it. So as you might have already heard, Nexus 3, the long-awaited update to Nexus, finally dropped last Friday. If you've been producing for a while, then chances are that you've heard of Nexus because for a while, it was the go-to VST for most electronic and urban producers. Now, although reFX, or reFX, the parent company for Nexus, although they've dropped expansions with new presets over the years, we really haven't seen an overhaul of the plugin in at least a decade. I used to use Nexus a lot when I first started producing and I loved it. So I decided to upgrade my copy, and today I'm going to be walking you through over what's new in the plugin, as well as my overall thoughts. So without further ado, let's jump right in. Okay, so this is the new Nexus, Nexus 3, and before we get into all the new features, let's go over some of the new presets first. If you're currently a Nexus 2 user and you upgrade to Nexus 3, not only do you get all your old factory presets and expansions ported over, but you also get 360 new sounds, which you can find under the ROM extensions 2 folder. Of course, if you're brand new to Nexus, you also get this as well. But anyway, let's go ahead and go through some of these now. Okay, so that was just a brief overview of some of the new sounds you get whenever you purchase or upgrade to Nexus 3. There are 360 new sounds in total, and again, you can find them by going under the ROM Extensions 2 folder here. But okay, let's talk about what's new. The first thing we notice right off the bat is a new user interface. The interface on version 2 had more of a 3D hardware look to it, where this one is more flat. On the old one, we had a smaller browser display with the parameters sitting at the bottom and no keyboard. It kind of reminded me of the hardware versions of the Virus, Prophet, or Moog, the ones with no keybed. With this version, however, they decided to go with a bigger display to accommodate a more fluid organizational and search workflow, which we'll talk about in a minute, parameters on both sides, and a virtual keyboard at the bottom. Now, the parameters really haven't changed much. You still have your delay, filter, reverb, and modulation controls. You can interact with them a little more, but we'll talk about that a little later. But what has changed a lot is the way we see and interact with the presets. So if you take a look at the center of the VST, we now have this huge display separated into 3 windows, which are folders, categories, and presets. In the previous version, we only had 2 windows, one for the folder, which showed you the expansion or pack that you were currently on, and then one for the presets, which were organized by category and in alphabetical order. The category of the preset was depicted by abbreviations on the left, so for example, a lead would have the letters LD before the name, much like what you see here. Now, the only bad part about that old structure, though, is that because it was the only way to browse for sounds, you constantly had to be scrolling, especially if what you were searching for was further down alphabetically, say for example a pluck, which would have had the letters PL in the beginning. With the introduction of this middle category window, however, it is now much easier to find exactly what you're looking for. So for example, I can go under my trap expansion, decide that I want leads, so I would click that here, and now I get presented with nothing but leads from that folder that I selected. If you like the old way of working, the old structure, then all you have to do is on the folder window, make sure you select all, and then in the top right here, make sure that sort by name is unchecked. This will show you all of the presets sorted by their category, with their abbreviations and in alphabetical order, much like before. You can also go back and recheck that if you want to have them displayed alphabetically, but by their preset name instead. Another thing to point out is that we also now have the ability to audition a sound by clicking on it, much like you saw me do whenever I was going through these sounds. While we're on the topic of presets though, let's go ahead and talk about the new tag feature. So if you look at the top right, now you'll see a few color-coded tags that include preset characteristics like dark, active, and wide. At any moment, you can click once on any of these tags to be presented with presets that have that characteristic. Conversely, you can click on that same tag once more to tell the VST to hide any presets that have those traits. So for example, I can click on bases and then tell the VST to only show me the ones that are dark. And here we get a selection. Or I can tell it that I want bases that are dark but not spiky, and again, we get another selection. The one thing that I will say though, and maybe you've already noticed this, but not every preset has a tag yet. I'm sure they're currently working to tag everything else as we speak, but just keep that in mind. Now, if you ever come across a preset that you really like, you can hover over to the right of the name and then highlight or click that little heart, that will effectively put it into your favorites folder, which you can then access by clicking on the heart here. Another cool new feature is that you can now go over to the folder window here, right click and create a new bookmark. From there, you can then just drag over some of your favorite presets and then house them there. This can be really useful if, say, you're starting a new project and you want to do some sound selection beforehand. Finally, you could always see what preset you are on and what characteristics it has by looking at the top window here. From here, you could also advance to other presets. Okay, so far we've talked about improvements to the overall workflow and aesthetics of Nexus 3, but it doesn't end there. reFX has also improved some of the older features from Nexus 2 that gives us the ability to tweak some of the sounds that we work with, so let's go ahead and take a look at those. So if you take a look at the top of the VST, you will see some tabs here labeled Librarian, Arpeggiator, Transgate, Modulation, Effects, Features, and System. Most of these were already present in Nexus 2, they've just been improved upon in this version, and now of course they are tabs here where before they used to be little buttons on the side of the browser. The Librarian tab we already talked about, and that's the window we are currently on with the presets, but let's go over and talk about the Arpeggiator. So in Nexus, not only do we get regular presets, but sometimes we might come across one that is programmed or pre-programmed with a specific pattern, sometimes even just full blown out sequences. The Arpeggiator gives us the ability to manipulate these patterns, and in Nexus 3, it's gotten a complete overhaul. So for example, let me go over and pick something that might already have a pattern. Let me just pick an arpeggio here to make it easy. So I'm clicking one key and I'm getting all of that. So if you take a look, for this particular preset, we have this specific pattern going on, and we can really just go to town here and change anything that we want about this. So we have the ability to change the mode, up, down, alter, order, random, poly, and sequence. And fun fact, if you hit sequence, you get the full blown out piano roll here. So that's pretty cool. You could also change what octave it is being played in. You can change the speed. So right now it's being played at 1/16 notes, but you can go crazy here with the different time signatures. You can affect the gate, the length, the filter, the strum, and the shuffle. And of course, you can come in here and just kind of do your own thing in this editor. So I can maybe take away some. Let's see how that sounds. Maybe add a couple more here and mess with the velocity. So as you can see, the possibilities are endless. Okay, moving on to the next tab, we have the Transgate. Now this is basically a gate sequencer to let you add rhythmic patterns to your presets, and much like with the Arpeggiator, you do get a nice selection of parameters that you can control and create exactly what you want. So if I were to add a Transgate to the bass that I'm currently on right now, it would sound something like this. Next up, we have the Modulation tab, and here is where you can further manipulate things like the vibrato, the pitch bend, portamento, and just so much more. Now, following that, we also have the Effects tab. Now, the Effects tab used to be a little button in Nexus 2 called Mix, and this to me is probably what's seen the biggest change, because now that we have this bigger browser window, they've decided to use that space to make the effects more visual. Now, as you can see, the effects for these presets will always be available to you on the sides here, but if you want to get a visual representation and just deeper control, you could always come to the Effects tab. What's cool here is that this window only shows you what you currently have on, and of course, you can take away effects or add them, up to you. So to demonstrate using the same bass we've been using for these past couple examples, right now it sounds like this. No arpeggiator, no transgate. But I can always add in, say, a filter. Let me do the cutoff here. Maybe add an EQ. So you get the idea. Here again, the possibilities are just endless. The next tab over is the Features tab, and this is where you'll be able to mess with the different parts of the preset. So for example, the bass that we're currently on, it looks like it has 3 oscillators working and a phaser. So at any moment I can turn off the phaser, I can turn off any oscillators and mess with things like the volume, the panning, and the tuning. Finally, the last tab over to the right is the Settings tab. It basically allows you to control certain characteristics of the plugin as a whole. Okay, now that we've seen the entire plugin, let's talk about some important notes and my overall thoughts. First and most importantly, you no longer, and I repeat, you no longer need an e-licenser to run Nexus, and that by itself is probably a good enough reason to upgrade. Now personally, I'm not the biggest fan of having like physical keys to authenticate my plugins, but you know what, I get it. You're trying to prevent theft, I get it. If you all can get on the same page, like what we have with iLok, I don't mind it too much. But for whatever reason, reFX decided that they wanted to do their own thing. So for the past couple years, if you wanted to run Nexus, you had to carry this little thing. If you guys can see it. You had to carry this little thing with you. If you didn't have it, or if you lost it, or if it got stolen or whatever, you couldn't even turn on the plugin. With Nexus 3, however, they've not only gotten rid of that silly little dongle, but just physical keys altogether. Nexus 3 and all of its expansions can now be downloaded and authorized through a cloud-based platform, much like you would see with plugins from iZotope. This is such a welcome improvement, and again, this alone might be the reason to upgrade. Buying and adding expansions is also now a lot easier because as soon as you buy it on their store, it'll be added to your cloud account, and then from there you can just download and it'll authorize and do everything beautifully all in one place, as opposed to you having to do that manually through the settings. Also, if you're a fan of the NKS platform, then you'll be happy to hear that Nexus 3 will soon be NKS compatible, so you'll be able to pull that up in complete control along with your other NKS compatible plugins. Okay, so to answer the question, is Nexus 3 worth it? I would say it depends. So to better illustrate this, let's go ahead and break down everything that you get if you upgrade or purchase Nexus 3. When you get Nexus 3, you get a new interface, you get a new browser window, you get the new tagging feature for these sounds, you get improved older features from Nexus 2 like the arpeggiator and the transgate and the new effects window. You get no more e-licenser, you get NKS compatibility, so if you're a fan of that and you want to use this in complete control, you definitely can. And of course, you get 360 new sounds. Now, is that worth the $100 upgrade charge if you're a current Nexus 2 owner, or the $250 full retail price if you're a new user? I don't know. That's something you're gonna have to decide. Personally, like I said in the beginning, I used to use Nexus a lot when I started producing, and it holds a special place in my production toolbox because it was actually the first third-party VST that I was able to afford and buy with my own money. Aside from that emotional bias, other things that really stick out to me with this update are the layout. I actually do like it. The new browser window for you to be able to find and tag your sounds, that's also really nice. No more e-licenser. I think everybody appreciates this. And NKS compatibility. I actually am looking forward to this because I want to get more into using complete control, so that is nice. Now, even though I like Nexus 3 and I upgraded my copy, I really do wish these prices were a lot lower. Like for example, if the upgrade to Nexus 3 from 2 was like 50 bucks, 75 max, that would have been a much easier recommendation. If the full price for Nexus 3 was like 150 or closer to 180, like the price of Silent or Serum, again, a much better recommendation. But because it's at 250 full price and 100 for the upgrade, it'll really just come down to whether or not you find these new features useful, and that's gonna be up to you. But that's it for me. Thank you so much for watching. I'm gonna link Nexus 3 down in the description for your convenience, so you can pick it up if you want. But as always, like this video if you like it, subscribe if you're not already, but I'll see you on the next one.